Erev Tov, Bruchim Habayim. Good evening, my friends, and welcome. My name is Doron Krakow. I am the president and CEO of the Jewish Community Centers Association of North America, a network of 170 JCCs across the US and Canada that bear the unique responsibility of welcoming more than 1 million Jews of every background and disposition through their doors each and every week throughout the year. Tonight is my extraordinary privilege to introduce our special guest, Israel's Minister of Defense, Benjamin Gantz. Minister Gantz served as the 20th Chief of the General Staff of the Israel Defense Forces from 2011 to 2015. As Chief of Staff, he led the IDF during 3 major campaigns: Operation Pillar of Defense in November of 2012, Operation Brother's Keeper in June of 2014, and Tzuk Eitan, Operation Protective Edge in July of 2014. Upon retiring from the military, he served as chairman of the Yad Ben-Gurion Society, dedicated to educational activism in the Negev, and as chairman of the advisory board of Natal, the Israel Trauma and Resilience Center, which offers assistance to Israeli victims of war and terror. In December of 2018, he formed the Israel Resilience Party, later merging with other political groups to form Kahol Lavan, the blue and white faction. In April 2020, the faction disbanded, and his party, together with the Likud, established a national emergency unity government in which he served as alternate prime minister and minister of defense. Blue and white ran for the 24th Knesset and joined the new unity government, in which he proudly serves as Deputy Prime Minister and Israel's Minister of Defense. I'm particularly honored to note that Minister Gantz is also a former commander of the Tzanchanim, the IDF's paratroopers brigade, in which my son Aaron has proudly served. Chaverim, ladies and gentlemen, Defense Minister Benjamin Gantz.
Good evening, friends, Doron, Diane, William, Malcolm. It's really a pleasure to be here tonight. And I would like to begin my remarks with a message of gratitude to all of you. Pure, simple gratitude. Thank you for patching over the differences between our different parts of community and for uniting us over shared interests and challenges that the Jewish world now faces. Thank you for supporting and loving Israel, for never despairing or retreating from the struggle to improve the Jewish state. Thank you for investing in young generations of Jews so they may know the story of the second home in Israel and continue the legacy of our eternal bond. We know that when rockets rain down on Sderot, Jewish students at NYU may feel the need to tuck away their Magen David. We know that when Amnesty publishes their outrageous apartheid report, houses of prayer in California are targeted. Our lives, our destinies are tied. The state of Israel and the people of Israel have tremendous commitment to you. I am aware that the burden of proof is still on us, and we have a long way to go. We must address the layout of the Western Wall, which I have said before is long enough for us all. We must deal with the conversion, an issue that the Minister of Religious Affairs is dealing with in those days. We must listen, not just hear, learning and adapting to your needs and standing by you as you do by us. The current Israeli government has started taking action after a long, difficult of stagnation. This is a diverse, complex, and young government. And as you may have heard, there are some crises which I'm sure we will overcome. One of the changes we are dealing with is our relationship with the United States. Please make no mistake. Israel's closest strategic partner is the United States. And this government has ended a dangerous trend of partisanship that threatened our strategic alliance. Last week, I sat down with Senator Graham. 2 days ago, I met with Vice President Kamala Harris, and yesterday, I spoke to a delegation from the Democratic Party. The message in all three cases was clear. United States-Israel bond is bipartisan, unique, and ironclad. I am aware of what worries the world these days. We're all aware of the crisis in Ukraine. As someone who has experienced conflict, lost brothers in arms, and seen hundreds of bereaved families during my over 40 years of service, I can tell you that in war, even the winner gets to lose. Therefore, I believe that all parties involved must do whatever it takes to prevent bloodshed. In Israel, we too have commitment to preventing unnecessary bloodshed. Our top priority is to protect our citizens, and we are heavily investing in securing Israel's north and south, where I know you will be visiting tomorrow. I hope that you will see a new security barrier which gives residents in the south a sense of security and perfectly illustrates the reality we live in. We reach out to our neighbors, including the Palestinians. Years of neglecting those issues unfortunately strengthened Hamas. I took it upon myself to change this reality, to take initiatives that will support the Palestinian authorities' political legitimacy, to invest in the Palestinian economy, and to illustrate the cost of any harm made to the State of Israel. It is our moral and national duty to address the strategic issue vis-à-vis the Palestinians. It is in our strategic interest to do so because it is the only way to preserve Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. We not only wish to live in security, but we want to live in peace. And peace, my friend, is no longer an illusion. If you had told me that after my first mission as a soldier, securing President Sadat convoys in Israel in 1978, that more than 40 years later I would have flown with this very same plane to Bahrain as Israel's Minister of Defense, I would have waved you off. If you would have told me that I would one day stand in a synagogue in Rabat and pray for the well-being of Israel's soldier, I would have laughed. But this truly happened. The foundations of Abraham Accords and our ties with countries in the region has been based on diplomatic partnership and people-to-people relations. We have recently added a new layer to our ties. That's the defense relations. These ties are critical as we see the rise of Iranian aggression. I have said this before, and I will stress this again. A nuclear deal, if signed with Iran, does not mark the end of the road. It opens the door to important actions that must be taken. This includes monitoring OPEN's file. It also means stopping the development of ballistic missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads. And we must not reach this point in the road again, and that means dealing with the sunset clause. Enforcement and supervision by the IAEA are critical, but not enough. We need to have offensive capabilities and a set of sanctions ready in our back pockets in case Iran violates a future agreement. Iran strives to be a hegemon. Its nuclear program is a major enabler for that, but it is just one part of it. The second is taking over failed states and conducting war by proxy. As you can see behind me, during the JCPOA period, Iran increased its security budget by 50%. We must deal with Iranian aggression and support for the proxies and ensure that their so-called security budget isn't increased and money isn't poured into terrorism. And today I would like to share with you a new issue, a new example. And I would like to reveal just how far Iranian aggression has reached. I have brought with me a single image. It is really worth 1,000 words. This image shows a model of advanced Iranian Mohajer UAV presented by Venezuela's president. In addition to developing Iranian UAVs in Venezuela, our assessment showed that Iranian PGMs are being delivered for these UAVs and other similar models. With this image in mind, I can tell you that in my meetings with partners from around the world, including African and Latin American partners, I heard extreme concerns about Iranian support for terrorism. Iran truly is a global and regional challenge and not just a threat to the state of Israel. But Iran is also in crisis. There are demonstrations, people are hungry, there are water shortages, not to mention a violation of basic human rights. As a result, Iran has submitted a budget proposal with a significant increase in welfare investments. I can only pray that the frozen assets and funds following a potential agreement will go to a mother of 4 and a grandfather of 6. But I have my doubts on this issue. The international community, under the US leadership, must be proactive, taking defensive and offensive actions to counter direct and indirect Iranian aggression anywhere, anytime. We must address both Iran's nuclear ambitions and its regional aggression. We have the capability to produce advanced defense systems. We have a duty to share intelligence, and we have the means as a community to pressure Iran. These are important tasks, regardless of whether or not a nuclear agreement is reached. Distinguished guests and friends, I have illustrated that our future are tied and that we must lean on each other, now more than ever. So I will take this moment to say thank you once again for being here and for living your lives with so much conviction and compassion. We will never cease to do the same. Thank you. I can take any question. You will answer the one I don't understand.
I've got your back.
Okay.
We're very happy to open up for questions. If you'd raise your hand and when called upon, stand and identify yourself and your organization, please. Seymour, please.
Seymour Reich. Here we go. Seymour Reich, past chairman of the conference. Mr. Gantz, it's always nice to have you here and to hear your words. I think I read a report a few weeks ago that some former military generals of the IDF and military strategists indicated that it was wrong for the former prime minister and the former president of the United States to break the Iranian deal. Instead, they should have tried to negotiate it. Do you have a view on that subject?
Thank you very much for the question. Obviously, I will have to answer it in a diplomatic manner. After retirement from the IDF, I gave my first speech in the States in front of the Washington Institute, and it was right after the signing of the first JCPOA. And whether I liked it or not, the agreement was very much there. And I said, and I'm quoting myself if I may do so, that it's not a question of a good deal or a bad deal, it's a fact of a done deal. And from my perspective, the deal had lots of loopholes. It gave some advantages by postponing the threat in a few years, etc. But it had lots of loopholes in it anyhow. So when the second round happened and the United States decided to get out of the deal, for me it became a fact as well. And what I'm preaching for is to use pressure on Iran, because I believe that even if you want to reach another deal, a pressure will end up bringing a better deal. And I would hate to see the world strategically blink in front of the Iranians and give them the opportunity to revisit this program or to take advantage of it in future years. So there are different ways of pressuring someone. President Trump did it by getting out of the deal and producing the maximum pressure campaign. And now they are trying to get a deal that will postpone the threat from weeks' times ahead in terms of enrichment into months ahead, which I hope that will work. It won't help me to criticize one's decision. However, it is my duty to prepare the IDF and the security establishment of Israel to be ready to act when and if needed in any given time, from present times to future times, and to strengthen it as much as I can. So if a deal will be reached, I hope it will be a better deal than it looks like right now. But in any case, I can assure you that the State of Israel will fulfill its strategic essence of being able to defend our country and our people whenever we need and if we have to do so. So this is my foremost worries about this issue.
Betty, please.
Thank you. Betty Ehrenberg, World Jewish Congress, North America. Mr. Minister, thank you for coming to address us tonight. My question is, when you met, it's sort of twofold, but it's the same question. You met with Senator Graham, with Vice President Harris, and some of the Democratic leadership. How were you reassured, or were you sufficiently reassured that that the United States has Israel's back regarding the renewal of the deal with Iran? And to add to that, I'm sure you have also been meeting with European allies. And given, what is your take, what is your feeling or reading of the willingness of European allies to as well? You mentioned the U.S. has to lead proactively with the international community. What can we expect, in your opinion, from the European allies?
Yes, thank you. Indeed, I met with everybody that I've spoke about and you mentioned, and I was happy to see the support for the State of Israel from really both sides of the aisle. I think there are two pillars to ensure our future bond as well. First one would be to make sure we are still familiar with one another. United States is changing. The demography structure of the United States society is changing. The Jewish community, it has a major role in the relations between the United States and us, is changing as well. We are changing as Israelis. And we should not take for granted that the relation, or that the relationship are based on the same knowledge as they were before when we look forward, because people are knowing less and being influenced more by other elements, you know, new media, etc., etc. So we must continue and invest in education programs. We must come and force from Israel to the States, from the state to Israel. We must educate our societies to what there is here. So this is one element which I think is very important. The second aspect would be to maintain a very important element that makes Israel so unique in the Middle East regarding the United States' relations with Middle East players. We are the only country in the Middle East that doesn't ask the United States to fight for it. And we are fighting for ourselves. And I think that this element is highly appreciated by the American people, is highly appreciated the American by the American administration, and I think it is easier for the United States to back up someone who's willing to stand for himself and not leaning on someone else. So I hope that with this combination, and seriously speaking, you know, when you think on the uniqueness of the relations between the United States and Israel, it's based on shared values, on two political democratic concepts, and on the same interest, because I just explained how Iran is in the interest of the United States and the international community just as it is a threat for the state of Israel. So when you have a combined interest and combined values and combined political systems, the outcome is a strategic relationship that goes together with one another. I met with the Europeans. They are very much united right now in terms of declaring the same declarations. That stands for the case of Iran, and that also stands for the case of Ukraine. They are pretty much aligned with one another in terms of economical pressure and sanctions and diplomatic pressure. I'm not that much sure about their decisiveness and determination if it comes to an action. It goes back to my basic approach that says, from Israeli perspective, we must look what happened to Ukraine, or what might happen to Ukraine. Eventually, it will stay by itself. We must always remember, really, to combine two elements. You know, for me, it's like a life agenda. To be strong in one hand, and at the same time seek for peace and be just as much as I can on the other hand. And only the combination of those two will secure Israel for the future, as far as I'm concerned.
Please.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Susan Heller-Pinto. I'm with the Anti-Defamation League. I'd like to ask you to expand on your remarks about outreach to the Palestinians. If you could provide some more examples or what is planned and what is intended. And I'd also like to link that to something you said earlier in your remarks, which is just as, and this is not the primary driver of engagement with the Palestinians, but just as conflict with the Palestinians has an impact on the students at NYU or the University of Chicago, so does outreach to the Palestinians have a positive ameliorative effect for these students. So thank you very much.
As I've said, I think Israel has two major challenges. Strategically and operationally, we need to see what Iran is doing on its nuclear and its regional aggression and its support for the proxies in the region, because this is an external threat which is always there and we must pay attention to. There are two other strategic issues that we as Israelis and Jews, we need to look at. One is an internal issue of how is the Israeli society and the Jewish world is functioning. How united are we, how diverse we are, how can we talk with one another, etc., etc. And the other issue is our relations with the Palestinians. Let me share with you that when I met Abu Mazen lately, I honestly told him that I had a dream that he won't be here, and that I'm sure that he had the same dream about me. But the fact is that both of us are here, and we must find ways of living with one another. And I'm saying it, as I said, I'm saying it from an Israeli Zionistic perspective. I'm not saying it because I care that much about the Palestinians. I'm saying it because I care that much about the state of Israel. I don't think we can come to a near-time agreement with the Palestinians. I think it will take a while before we will be able to do so. But what I'm trying to do is to create a better reference between the two sides of the conflicts that in its turn will be a better reference to negotiate from. And we are not at that point right now. So I want to increase their political legitimacy, because the alternative of the Palestinians are two options. None of them is good for us. One would be to strengthen Hamas. It's exactly not what we want. And the other will be the idea of the one state for both people. And that's going to be devastating for us in terms of Judaism and democracy. So I cannot go in this direction, so I have to increase their governance as much as I can. I want to stay connected with them. I want to communicate with them all the time on the strategic and the operational level. And I want them to live in high standard of living and good economy, because I think that it will create a better reference for them and for us as they are being our neighbors. And if we can shrink the conflict and create a different reference, we may find the ways to move forward. Once we do that, I believe it will have the impact on other places in the world and the way they are looking at us as well. I have just one recommendation to my Jewish fellows in the States, Youngs and others, that are under anti-Semitism and they are under political pressure on the state of Israel in the forms of BDS or other elements. Don't forget the basic assumption or working assumption or the basic reality. It's true that we are stronger. It doesn't mean that we are not right. We are stronger, but we are also right. And as much as I want to promote Palestinian sovereignty and governance, I have to secure the security of Israel. And it demands from them to be able to face this pressure, and I hope that they will do so.
You have time for another question?
Yeah?
Josh, please.
Thank you, Doron. Josh Katzen from Camera. General, back to Iran for this question. You said in your prepared remarks that you thought that any deal should be subject to strong investigations and verifications by the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. We, the Conference of Presidents, met with the IAEA in the middle of the deal in 2017, and they told us that although they could do a great job inspecting sites that Iran gave them access to, Iran was not giving them access to all sites, so they really had no idea what was going on. Do you have any confidence in the IAEA being able to inspect the Iranian production?
I think that wherever the IAEA is present, he has a very good idea of what's happening, and obviously, if he's not present, then he cannot know what's going on in other places. Therefore, as far as inspection, my formula for, or what I think that need to be addressed by the international community for Iran, as far as inspection, is inspections anytime, anywhere. And if you follow the anytime, anywhere, and you conduct the IAEA operation in lieu with some intelligence cooperation with different organizations of the Western countries, I think we can end up getting reasonable awareness of what's actually happening. But the basic should be, as far as inspection, anytime, anywhere. Okay. I see someone is very anxious to. I'll take one more. Sorry.
Last question. Nathan, please.
Hi. I'm Nathan Diamond with the Orthodox Union. The Prime Minister, when he addressed this conference, pointed out that the Iran deal that's being negotiated is really only focused on the nuclear issue, and there are a lot of important issues outside the parameters of the deal. From your perspective, from the defense leadership perspective, aside from the clarity that Israel is not bound by the agreement and has the freedom to operate, what is the most important issue and priority outside of the parameters of what's being negotiated that you would like us to focus on and is essential for Israel's security going forward if a deal is concluded?
Well, of course, in Iran, I would say that weaponization processes and delivery systems are the most important one. And regionally speaking, is the regional aggression I've spoke about throughout my speech. They took over many huge area in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, obviously Lebanon. They are supporting Hezbollah, and Hezbollah possess fire capabilities that NATO countries does not have. Is stronger by far than most NATO countries, European NATO countries, in terms of firepower. So those are the issues I think that would be helpful if we will get some kind of international cooperation, whether it's pressure or intelligence or whatever kind of cooperation we may have. We are increasing our cooperation with the countries in the region. You know, Israel have been moved from EUCOM to CENTCOM. It gives us a huge approach to other countries in the region. And I think we can take advantage of that as well. Needing to finish this meeting, I would just want to say once again, thank you. I'm a strong believer in a Zionistic approach that basically gives us, as a Jewish people, a protected homeland that can flourish economically and will be acceptable by this region and supported by the world. And I think whatever we do in the future, we must stand in the line of securing Israel, developing Israel, staying connected to the world, staying connected to the region, aware of what needs to be done externally, what needs to be done with the Palestinians, and what needs to be done among us. And you know, in my parliament office, Malcolm was just there. There are two pictures. One of 3 soldiers that represents the constant need for security, and one of 2 doves with olive branches in their mouth, and that stands that we will have Shalom Aleinu and Shalom Benenu, peace upon us and peace among us. Thank you very much.
I'll ask you to stay for 1 minute. I'll make a short presentation. Thank you. Minister Gantz, first of all, on behalf of the Conference of Presidents, we are deeply grateful to you for your time and your wisdom. We'd like to make a small presentation to you of a token of our esteem and our heartfelt dedication to the cause to which you have devoted your life, the safeguarding of the State of Israel. This piece of artwork was done by a Jerusalem artist by the name of Sharon Binder, which says simply, Leman Sion lo echaseh, uleman Yerushalayim lo eshkot. From our hearts to yours.
Thank you very much. Roman, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very nice.
Dinner is going to be served next door, so there are two ways to get into the room. There's a door here to my left. You can also exit to the right and go around to where we were last night. Again, at the end of dinner, please stop and do an antigen test and a PCR test in the same room where we were last night. Why does it say?